Hi, it's Sandy with Sandy Cogdill Designs, and today I have a couple of cards that I created using Honeybee's Lovely Layers large dog dies, and then I also created a background using the dies from Honeybees called Pet Friends. This is a technique that I learned from Carrie Rhodes, and I will link the video at the bottom of this. She created this great background for a trifold card with dinosaurs on it using stamping foam, and I had never tried doing this before. So this was my first attempt, and I love it. I love the way it turns out. It kind of looks like a batik fabric to me, or you could even be petroglyphs, I guess, if you have the right type theme card. Anyway, go ahead and hit subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill Designs or on my blog www.sandycogdilldesigns.com. Let's get started. Okay, I'm going to start out with the large Burmese mountain dog. At least I think that's what that dog is. I have 3 different colors of brown cut out. I've got a really dark brown, a rusty color, kind of a medium brown, and then I also have a cream color for like his chest area and his muzzle. There's a little piece of pink, and then I also have some black for his little eyes, nose, and eyebrows. So I'm going to first start out by placing them on my stamp wheel. It gives me a nice texture to do a little bit of ink blending on. I like using that because it holds down those little thin legs and those little pieces fairly well so I can work with them. For the medium brown, I'm using a little bit of vintage photo distress oxide ink, and I'm just going to go around the edges of the die cut where it's going to show, and so you can kind of usually tell where those edges are because there's usually a little bit of embossing up into the leg. Next, I'm going to do a little bit of shading on his fur on the chest, his muzzle, his little paws. I'm going to use pumice stone to hit the outside edge of all those pieces. He's kind of a cute dog. He reminds me a lot of my dog, only my dog's a brindle, and that would be really hard to do shading on. Anyway, so we're going to touch those edges up with a little bit of pumice stone, and then we'll move on to the main body. I'm still using the pumice stone distress oxide ink to go around the outside edges of this dark brown piece of his body. As I said before, there are little areas that have some embossing in them, and that's really helpful to go in when you're blending with the ink to kind of give that body just a little bit more dimension. So I'll do that on his body and on the head. Now it's time for me to start putting this guy together. I'm going to use liquid glue. I know on some of the things that I do with Honeybees stamps, I will use an adhesive tape, but when they're bigger pieces like this, I find it easier to use the liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of more time to kind of push those pieces around and get them right into place. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the darker brown body piece and put that on the base of my dog. There are also embossed areas on each of these pieces, or on most of the pieces anyway, that also help you line it up so that you get that in just the right place. Sometimes when my glue kind of goops out on the sides, then I use my little pokey tool to kind of clean up that mess. That works a little bit better than using your fingers. Sometimes the fingers smear the glue and then you kind of have a shiny spot there. So anyway, I'm going to go through each one of the pieces, gluing them together and putting them on my little dog. Once I get the body all done, I will start working on his little head. I goofed on this one as I was laying in the pieces on the head. I totally skipped the little piece that's pink that is his tongue. That's not a big problem because I was able just to clip it and glue it in at a later time. Now when I do my little teeny tiny pieces like the eyeballs, his eyebrows, and his nose, I like to try to keep that in the actual die itself and then kind of dig them out with either a pin or my little pokey tool to so I don't lose them. I mean, those pieces are so teeny. They are definitely easy to lose. They also take a little bit of manipulation to get them in just the right spot. Again, I do use a pin to do a lot of my moving around and picking pieces up if my pokey tool is too big for them. Once I got done with the head, I decided that I wanted to have a little bit more dimension on that. So I used some really thin foam squares and just popped that up. Off camera, I've fixed his little tongue. I've snipped it and glued it on his little mouth. Now I'm working on his fur on his chest. I waited until my head was done so that I could get the alignment exactly where I wanted it, directly below his chin. It also helped me to place the two little floofs on the side of that white chest fur to get that lined up just the way that I liked it. He looks so much like my little Quincy with his little floofies and white chest. Love him. Here are my two mountain dogs. The one on the left has the ink blending and the one on the right has no ink blending, and they both make amazing looking dogs. So it's entirely up to you which technique you want to use. Moving on to our little lab. Okay, this little guy is cut out of 3 different shades of cream paper. I'm going to use the same technique as I used for my little mountain dog. I'll go ahead and put him on the little pieces on my stamp wheel and do some ink blending. This time I'm going to be using Rusty Hinge Distress Oxide ink. And when I do the blending, I try to keep most of the color to the outside edges and then just blend in. That helps give it a rounded effect. Sometimes to help me with my shading, I will place one of the top layers on top of what I'm working on to give me an idea of where I would want to do a little bit of extra depth on the background piece. That just helps give the little cutout a little bit of dimension. I'm just going to be quiet here for a little bit and just let you watch to see how I use the different pieces to place the shading on the lab. I wanted his chest to be lighter than the rest of his body, so I just kind of go back and forth on all 3 of these pieces and just keep adding ink until I feel like I've got the right type of shading, or at least what I'm looking for. Now we're going to start putting him together. He doesn't have a whole lot of pieces, especially not as many as the little mountain dog. So he's fairly quick to put together. I also bumped up his little head with a very thin foam tabs just to give him that extra dimension. As I was putting him together, I thought he would be so fun. Actually, both of them for Christmas cards, if you wanted to like put a red bow or a red bandana around their necks, or maybe a wreath if you had one that was just the right size. I think these dogs are very, very fun and can be used in a bunch of different cards. Again, I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit and let the video roll. I did kind of time myself, and most of these dogs take about 20 minutes to make from beginning to end once you have all your pieces cut out. That does not include cutting out the pieces. Sometimes it's always misleading when we watch these videos that people are doing things so much faster than we do, but it's not that at all. It's just everything is sped up to try to get it in a reasonable amount of time. So, like I said, it's about 20 to 22 minutes to get one of these dogs shaded and glued together once you have all your pieces cut out. Okay, now it's time to start on the background. I'm going to take a piece of chipboard that's 4.5 by 5 3/4, and I'm just going to place some strips down the chipboard using double-sided tape. Then I'm going to take the dies from the Honeybee Pet Friends die set, and I'm just going to randomly place that around, or so that they're sticking to my tape, kind of how I would want them to appear in my background. I'm not going to worry too much about the placement because I really don't know what's going to go on top. This is just a background, but it's a really, really fun background to make. Now I'm going to take my stamping foam, and using my heat tool, I'm going to start warming up the surface of that foam. Now with that surface soft and pliable, I'm going to press my chipboard on top of that surface very firmly, and I want to make sure that I'm hitting all the edges just to make sure that they get as nice an impression as the ones in the center. The first color of Distress Oxide ink I'm going to be using is Candy Apple. I'm going to take that and give that a nice coat, a good solid coat, all the way over the top surface of that stamp pad. As I was inking it up, I noticed that the impression that was left from the chipboard was showing some of the tape that I had used to glue down my little my die pieces. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like that, but once I got my impressions done, I did like it because it just added another dimension of color and interest to the piece of paper. So now I'm going to take my spray bottle and lightly mist my stamp. One thing I did learn is you don't want to over wet that, because then all of a sudden your ink starts running down into your creases and you're not going to get a nice impression. Once I get that wet, I'm going to lay my paper on top. I also found out that if you press real hard, you kind of lose some of the detail. So my suggestion would be to just lightly pat it or rub it and then peel your paper off. And that looks pretty good. Even though there was quite a bit of ink left on that pad, I went ahead and wiped it off and cleaned up my my little stamp pad, just because I wasn't really crazy about the bright red color, and I wasn't happy with the way it, completely happy with the way it stamped out. So this time I'm going to be using Lumberjack Plaid. I'm going to ink my stamp surface, and this time after I mist it, I'm not going to press, well, first of all, I'm not going to mist as much, and then I'm not going to press as hard. And the impression I got from this attempt was much better, and I was a little bit happier with it. And here are the two side by side. The one on the right is the one that was overspritzed and I pressed too hard, and you can definitely see a difference in the clarity of the impression. I can't tell you how much fun I had making these backgrounds. I couldn't stop once I started. So there is a huge shout out to Carrie Rhodes for doing that live video. I will link it in the description. And it's just fun to see how she used two different colors and lined them up in a trifold card. I'm not going to show you how I put the cards together because they are pretty basic, and I think you can probably figure out what I did to put them together. Thanks so much for stopping by today. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. You can follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdell or on my blog, www.sandycogdelldesigns.com. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you've been inspired to create your own backgrounds. Bye-bye.